All right, welcome back to the deep dive. We got a lot of really great feedback on our last deep dive into the history of Title IX.
Yeah, definitely seems like something vocals are interested in.
And it seemed like there were a lot of people who wanted to go a bit deeper into the current debates.
For sure.
And some of the proposed legislation that's out there. So that's what we're going to do today.
Sounds good.
We're going to do a deep dive into one specific bill. This is House Bill 28, also known as the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act of 2025.
Oh yeah, I've heard a lot about that one.
So this is a bill that aims to amend Title IX.
Right.
Specifically concerning how sex is determined in athletics. And, you had shared this with me because you were interested in kind of understanding how these biological definitions are sort of entering this conversation around sports.
I mean, it's a really interesting intersection of science and social policy, and law.
Absolutely.
It's fascinating to see how these things are all coming together.
And for our listeners too, just to provide a little context, the source material that we're going to be looking at today is the engrossed version of H.R.28.
Okay.
That means it's the version that's been formally passed by the House.
So it's correct.
And it's under consideration by the Senate.
Got it.
So we're looking at a real piece of legislation here.
Yeah.
Not just a draft or an idea.
Yeah, this is the real deal.
This is moving through the legislative process.
Oh, yeah.
And our mission today, as always, is to unpack what's in this bill.
Right.
Not to advocate for any specific policy or take sides, but to make sure that you as our listeners have a really clear understanding of what this proposed law would actually do. So let's get right into it.
I get it.
So the central point of H.R. 28 seems to be about adding a new rule to Title IX. What exactly is this rule? What's going on here?
Okay, so it's adding a new subsection. This is subsection 1. Section 901 of the Education Amendments of 1972. Essentially, this new subsection says that it's going to be a violation of Title IX for any educational institution or program that's receiving federal funding to allow someone whose sex is male to participate in athletic programs or activities designated for women or girls.
So it's creating a really specific prohibition here based on sex in these designated programs.
It's saying if you receive federal money, you can't have males participating in these programs.
Okay, that makes sense. And that brings up, I think, the really core question here. How does the bill define sex?
Right.
Because that seems like it's the linchpin of,
That's huge.
Of this whole thing.
Yeah.
How do they actually determine that?
So subsection 2 gets right to that point.
Okay.
It states really explicitly that sex shall be recognized based solely on a person's reproductive biology and genetics at birth.
Okay.
So it's grounding this definition in biological factors present at birth.
Reproductive biology and genetics at birth.
That's the marker.
Really specific. And I think that brings us to the next question, which is what exactly do they mean by athletic programs or activities?
Yeah.
Is this just varsity sports? Is it something broader than that?
So 83 clarifies that.
Okay.
It says that the definition of athletic programs or activities isn't limited to just competitive sports teams.
Yeah.
But includes all programs or activities where being on an athletic team is a requirement to participate.
So it could be a lot of things, potentially.
Yeah, it's got a pretty wide reach.
It could be like intramurals or maybe even PE classes.
Right, six.
Anything where you have to be on a team to do it. And this brings up another interesting point in the bill. There's an exception. That deals with training and practice.
Oh yeah, that's an important one.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Sure, so subsection D4 introduces this exception, and it basically says that the bill doesn't prevent federally funded institutions from allowing males to train or practice with women's or girls' athletic programs.
So they can still train together, they can practice together.
Right.
But there's a really important caveat here.
Big caveat, which is it's only allowed if no female athlete is negatively impacted.
Okay, so it's not just a blanket allowance.
No, there are definitely some conditions.
There's some guardrails here.
Absolutely.
And it seems like they actually define what they mean by negatively impacted.
Yeah, they get really specific.
Because I was looking through the bill, and they actually list some examples of what would constitute a negative impact.
Right. So, for example, being denied a spot on the team roster.
Okay.
Losing out on opportunities to participate in practice or competition.
So it's not just about the competition itself,
right.
It's also about the practice opportunities.
It's about the whole experience. They also include things like losing a scholarship, being displaced in terms of admission, to the educational institution itself.
So that's a big one.
Yeah, if you lose your spot because of this, that's a huge impact.
Or losing any other benefit. That comes with being a member of the program.
They're a pretty comprehensive list.
Yeah, so they really want to make sure that even in these non-competitive settings, like practice, the opportunities and benefits for female athletes are protected.
That seems to be the goal.
Now, there's also this provision in the bill for a study to be conducted by the Controller General.
Right. Pretty big study, actually.
What's the point of this study? What are they trying to figure out?
So subsection E of the bill is where this study is mandated.
Okay.
And its main purpose is to really dig into the meaning of that phrase we were just talking about, any other benefit when it comes to these negative impacts. So they want to figure out, what are those other benefits that women and girls get from participating in single-sex sports?
Makes sense.
And how allowing male participation might lead to the loss of those benefits.
So it's almost like they know there are other benefits.
Yeah.
But they want to figure out exactly what they are.
Yeah, they're trying to get a more complete picture.
And it seems like the bill actually lists some specific areas that the Controller General has to look at.
Right, they're not just leaving it open-ended.
What are some of those areas?
So they have to document any adverse psychological, developmental, participatory.
Okay, so it's not just physical, it's also about the psychological impact.
Exactly, it's much broader. They're also looking at sociological results.
Okay, so really a wide range of potential impacts.
Yeah.
For girls, if males are competing or participating in programs designed for girls.
And they list a bunch of specific examples.
Like what?
So they want to know, are girls being displaced or discouraged from participating?
Makes sense.
Are they losing roster spots?
Okay.
Do they have fewer opportunities
Oh.
to participate in practice or competition?
So again, it's not just about playing in the games.
It's about the whole experience.
It's about the training process too. And they also list some things like losing scholarships.
Right, the financial implications.
Or even having their admission to an institution affected.
Yeah, that's a big one.
And there's one that really jumped out at me. They specifically mention being deprived of an environment free of hostility based on sexual assault or harassment.
So they're really concerned about safety.
Yeah, it seems like that's a key part of this study.
It's a big deal.
Making sure that these environments are safe for girls.
And then, on top of all that, they have this catch-all phrase, any other benefit of participating in the athletics program.
So they really want to cover all the bases.
It's a very comprehensive study.
And once this study is done, they don't just file it away, right?
No, they have to report it to Congress.
Okay, so tell me about that reporting requirement.
Right. So the bill says that the Controller General has to submit a report detailing all the findings from this study.
Okay, so they're really going to lay it all out.
It's not just going to be internal.
And who are they reporting to specifically?
So they have to send this report to the House Committee on Education and the Workforce, and also to the Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions.
So they're really trying to make sure that this information is getting into the hands of lawmakers.
Right, it's meant to inform the legislative process.
And one last thing before we wrap up, I always like to look at the official short title. What is this bill actually called?
So in Section 1, it says that it can be officially cited as the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act of 2025.
Okay, the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act of 2025.
That's the formal name.
So just to kind of sum all this up, the main goal of H.R.28 is to amend Title IX by adding a new definition of sex based solely on reproductive biology and genetics at birth.
Right.
And it would generally prohibit anyone whose sex is male from participating in athletic programs designated for women or girls.
So it's creating that separation.
But there is that exception, allowing males to train or practice as long as it doesn't negatively impact female athletes.
Yeah, they're trying to balance things.
And then there's this whole study by the Controller General to really dig into the various benefits of single-sex sports for women and girls and the potential impacts of male participation.
They want to understand the full picture.
And it seems like the bill is really focused on protecting the opportunities and the experiences of female athletes.
That's definitely a central theme.
You know, it's interesting, there's this big emphasis on understanding those other benefits.
Yeah, the stuff that goes beyond just competition.
Right, and they're calling for this huge study to figure out all those less obvious advantages of single-sex sports environments.
It makes you think.
It really does. What are those things? What are those less tangible benefits that girls get from participating in these programs?
Big question.
Is it about developing leadership skills? Is it about building confidence?
Maybe.
Is it about creating a sense of belonging and community?
Could be.
Or is it about fostering a safe space free from certain pressures or certain types of harassment?
It's probably all of those things.
Yeah, it's probably a combination of all those things and more.
And some things we haven't even thought of.
Exactly. And you know this bill, it seems to be prompting a much broader discussion than just who gets to play. It's asking why. Why do we even have sex-segregated sports in education in the first place?
Yeah, what's the purpose?
What are the goals? How do we balance fairness and inclusion with all these other potential benefits that maybe we haven't fully considered?
It's a complex issue.
It is.
And I think this bill is forcing us to really grapple with it.
And that's really the point of this deep dive, right?
Absolutely.
To give you the information, to start asking these questions yourself. So think about it. What do you think the purpose of sex-segregated sports should be? And how do we make sure that we're creating the best possible environments for all students?
Those are the questions.
It's a tough conversation, but it's an important one.
And we need to have it.
And we appreciate you joining us for this deep dive,
as always,
into H.R.28.
Thanks for listening.
We'll be back next week with another deep dive into a different piece of legislation.
Looking forward to it.
All right, thanks for joining us. See you next time.